feminist is someone who believes that men and women are equal. So from that definition alone, you've probably realised that you are a feminist. Most people are. Over the years, there have been various feminist movements in which women and men have campaigned for equal rights between the sexes. Sexism is where someone is treated differently because of their gender, whether they're men or women. Sexism still exists around the world. In the UK, women still get paid less than men on average, just to name one example. However, sexism really shows itself in countries around the world where young baby girls are often killed because parents want sons, or where women are still not allowed to vote, work, or even wear trousers. Going back to the UK, you'll need to know how the situation has changed for women over time. It was only in 1918 that women were allowed to vote. Beforehand, women were considered to be too weak and emotional to be able to cope with rational thinking. Men were considered to be superior. Throughout the suffragette movement and other campaigns, women fought for the right to vote. It was only after women took on many of the roles of men during the war that they were finally able to prove how capable they were. However, even after World War I, women were expected to return to the home and look after the family. In the 1900s, only 15% of women were working, most of whom were poor and badly needed the additional income. In later years, the number of women working increased, partly because of changes in the economy that demanded that fathers and mothers worked to support the family. If you've seen the film Made in Dagenham that was released quite recently, you might know about a later feminist campaign. Women in the late 1960s campaigned for equal pay. Women were still not allowed to do certain jobs, and even when they did the same jobs as men, they were often paid much less. In 1970, the Equal Pay Act was passed. The 1970s also saw the UK's first female Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, as well as other laws such as the Sex Discrimination Act that made it illegal to discriminate against people in the workplace because of their gender. Women are now, in theory, protected by the United Declarations of Human Rights that states all people are equal, whether they are male or female. For exam, you need to be able to explain what sexism and discrimination are and why attitudes to women have changed over time. You should be able to use specific examples to explain why women are seen differently now, e.g., they're no longer expected to stay at home if they don't want to. Recently, Christianity has been a hot topic in the newspapers when it comes to women. Wouldn't it be easy to just employ women, I hear you say, and why don't the Christians who stop women from becoming priests get in trouble with the law for discrimination? In order to understand the debate, you need to have a much broader understanding of Christianity. The first thing to think about is what we mean by equality. A black man is equal to a white man, but there is a difference, namely the colour of their skin. This difference does not stop them being equal, but it is a difference all the same. Now, when it comes to men and women, the question is not always about whether they are equal, but whether their differences should mean that they are given different roles or jobs in society. Some people argue that women are better suited to staying at home, while other people argue that they should be able to work. Some people would argue that this is not necessarily old-fashioned, but it's just a case of being different, even though they're equal. The issue is further complicated when we take religion into account, because the 7 out of 10 people who are religious will probably look to their holy book for guidance on the matter. So in order to understand why people believe what they do about women, we need to understand what the books actually say. In the case of the Bible, one could easily get confused. St. Paul writes that there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, for we are all one in Jesus. This suggests that everyone is equal in the eyes of Jesus. In the first creation story, it also says that men and women were made in God's image, or imago Dei. This again suggests that women are equal. Jesus was also notorious for hanging out with women at a time when it was really unacceptable. He got in trouble a lot for spending time forgiving prostitutes and women who were about to be stoned by the powers that be, and had lots of female followers like Mary Magdalene. This would all suggest that men and women are equal. But not so fast. St. Paul also argues in one of his pretty long rants that women should cover up, and more importantly that wives should submit to their husbands as to the Lord, for a husband has authority over his wife. Not so equal. In fact, his teaching is used by a lot of evangelical or fundamentalist Christians to argue that women should stay at home and follow the guidance of their husbands. And here is the key bit. St. Paul also said that women should remain silent in church. This has been used to suggest that women should not be priests, as according to this bit of the Bible, they shouldn't speak in church at all. Roman Catholics, led by the Pope, follow a similar idea. In the Catechism, or the Roman Catholic law, it says that men and women should have equal roles in society. However, the Catechism also says that because Jesus was male, and so were his main disciples or followers, only men can be priests. Priests represent Jesus in church. It also says in the Bible that Eve was made to be Adam's helper, made out of his rib, and therefore inferior. Things are changing. Liberal Christians, including the Church of England, seem to disagree to some extent. Not all people from the Church of England, but enough to ensure that there are actually female priests being ordained as we speak. The only problem is that they lost the vote by 4 for women bishops. This means that you might see female priests, but not necessarily bishops within the Church of England. It's all about how you interpret the Bible. If you believe, as many liberals do, that the Bible needs to be adapted slightly to fit modern times, then you can afford to ignore some bits or change them, like the parts that say women should be silent in church. Instead, liberal Christians argue that the most important teachings are those of Jesus. They might argue that the golden rule and the idea of agape love suggest that we should treat others as we wish to be treated. If we would like to be given equality, then we must give it to women as well. So overall, Christians believe then that women and men are equal because of a range of biblical teachings that suggest people should treat others as equals. However, when it comes to jobs, Christians disagree. Some think that you can be equal but not have the same jobs or even roles in society. Other more liberal Christians argue that equality is having the same jobs and roles in society, so women need not stay at home and can become priests. You should be aware of these teachings when it comes to your exam. You may be asked to explain why Christians disagree with each other about the treatment of women, why some people believe women should stay in the home and raise children, and why others believe that women should have exactly the same role in society as men. For a sophisticated answer, you would be expected to understand what it means to say that people are equal but different. Recently, there's been talk of following in France's footsteps and banning the Muslim headscarf. There are many different types of veil, including the burqa, which covers the full body, and the hijab, which only covers the hair. This caused outrage in France amongst Muslims, where people were banned from wearing any religious symbol. The Quran states that both men and women must dress modestly. Men should wear loose clothing and must be covered from the navel, the belly button, to the knee in public. For women, the teaching is that the believing woman should subdue their eyes and maintain their chastity, or modesty. They shall not reveal any parts of their bodies except that which is necessary. Whilst most Muslims argue that the veil gives them privacy, shows their Muslim identity, and allows their personality to be seen before their looks, others argue that the veil has become a symbol of oppression that denies women equal rights. The news has never been very reliable when it comes to Islam. In fact, there is a lot of evidence to suggest that it contributes to Islamophobia or prejudice against Muslims, and only increases ignorance about the religion. So what is the truth about Islam and women's rights? Islam teaches that women are equal but different. In the Hadith, the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, it says that all people are equal as the teeth of a comb. It says this because combs tend to have equal spacing between the teeth or parts of it. The Quran teaches that God made men stronger so they can protect women, and that he made women so that they could have children. Neither role can work properly without the other. This usually translates into an emphasis on women raising children while men work. However, so long as the children are cared for, the teachings of the UK Muslim leaders are that women can work as well. Prophet Muhammad's wife ran her own business, so women may also work, so long as it does not have a negative effect on the family. This is why they released posters quite recently showing women who are Muslim in prominent positions. A barrister is a well-paid lawyer, often. And the idea is that actually it's not necessarily a case of preventing women from working, but making sure that the family are cared for as well. Both roles are extremely important. In fact, some Muslims argue that the woman's role is more important. So where does the negative reputation of Islam come from? For that, you usually need to look further away from the UK. Many Muslim feminists are campaigning for greater equality in Muslim countries around the world. They argue that the Quran has been interpreted incorrectly by strict Muslims, and that this has had a negative impact on women. For example, despite the Quran stressing the importance of education for women and men, many countries that follow Sharia or Islamic law still deny women the vote. Some Muslim extremists, such as the Taliban, have been known for treating women badly and encouraging them to be submissive. Malala is one example of someone who was shot because she tried to get an education. It is important to note that many Muslims disagree with this treatment of women and argue that it cannot be justified under Islam. Obviously, Malala is a Muslim and she is campaigning for equality. So in your exam, you should be able to discuss the teachings of the Quran that suggest that men and women are equal, the fact that both must be educated, and that both may work according to most Muslims. However, you should also be aware that for many Muslims, being equal does not mean having the same roles. Men and women are equal, but have a responsibility over different aspects of family life. You could also mention that some countries that follow Sharia law are criticised by other Muslims for not sticking to the Quran by denying women education and the vote.